We're in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, with a mother who experienced the unthinkable. But today, she created a movement that has people choosing love all over the world. This is Scarlett Lewis's story.
It starts with a dream, a vision, a goal. They work countless hours and have the energy to keep going. They are entrepreneurs, politicians, and leaders. They are the people who are making a difference. They are the hustlers, and this is their story.
You know, it's interesting because before Jesse died, I didn't know a lot about forgiveness. And I would watch news stories and I would think, my gosh, if anybody ever harmed any one of my family members, I would never forgive them.
Talk to me about what brought you here today, your journey, a little bit.
So my 6-year-old son was murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary School on December 14th, 2012, in one of the worst mass murders in U.S. history, when a former student shot his way through the glass doors of this little elementary school and proceeded to gun down 20 first graders in 2 first grade classrooms and 6 educators in one of the worst mass murders in U.S. history.
Talk to me about your message and the importance and the number one thing that we should be talking about as a society, not just as educators, but as human beings.
Well, Jesse really started this, obviously through the tragedy, but he left a message on our kitchen chalkboard. He wrote 3 words shortly before he died: nurturing, healing, love. Those 3 words, not something a 6-year-old would normally say, phonetically spelled, because he was in first grade and just learning to write. Those 3 words, however, are in the definition of compassion across all cultures. I knew immediately when I saw them that I was going to be spending the rest of my life spreading that message. I knew that I had to get it into schools, but I didn't exactly know what that would look like. And so, I was introduced to incredible educators, just courageous leaders. They kind of guided me through what social emotional learning was and how teaching kids how to have healthy relationships, how to manage their emotions, resilience, how to connect with one another is really the key learning that we all need. And so I took that message and created a program that is now in all 50 states and over 55 countries that teaches kids, bottom line, basically, how to choose love in any situation or circumstance.
So this program, how are they implementing that program into their schools?
So their lessons, right now for pre-K through 12th grade, we're working on an infant and a toddler program. We have a program for pregnant mothers based on how a baby's brain formation can be impacted by their environment, the stress of their environment. We're working on being able to touch everyone with this message, because really we're all human beings regardless of our age. We all have a want and need to love and be loved. And really, I think a lot of what is going on in our society is simply lack of love. And if you think about this empowering concept that we can choose love for ourselves, it's pretty amazing. And I just feel so blessed to have been able to transform and even save lives as we've gone along.
What's the response been?
The response has been amazing. This has spread by word of mouth. So there's no advertising, no PR. It is all the educators who are talking about the incredible transformation that they're seeing in their classrooms. I can give you a couple of examples. There was a high schooler in Waterbury, Connecticut, who attempted suicide. He was hospitalized, came back to his classroom. His teacher taught him the formula for choosing love. The formula for choosing love, which is the base, the foundation of the program, which is courage plus gratitude plus forgiveness plus compassion in action equals choosing love. And he said that it saved his life. And he's probably one of our biggest proponents of the whole program. He's really amazing. And there's another little community in Arkansas that had extreme tragedy. They had a suicide, then they had a copycat suicide, and then a car full of teenagers riding to the funeral was T-boned, and they had another death. And the guidance counselor ultimately told us that she had kind of underestimated the length of time that it took to kind of move through the trauma. And she had read about the program, she downloaded it, and ultimately she said it was the Choose Love program that really helped heal their entire community, not just the schools. So just some really incredible life-transforming stories, and it just makes me feel so blessed to be a huge part of it. Of course, I would not be doing this if it wasn't for the murder of my 6-year-old son. But I do feel grateful that I can be a part of the solution.
We talk about, I mean, we just had a school shooting, unfortunately, last week. You immediately when that happens, you hear all about, okay, well, what do we do? Do we guard the doors? Do we active shooter detection? All these things to prevent it. But really, you have to get to the root of why these children, teenagers, sometimes adults are doing this. And this is what your program is helping to get at. I mean, we really do need to get to preventing these children from getting to that place.
A lot of the conversation that you hear is on external safety measures. So door locks, as you said, active shooter protocols, single point entries, but none of that addresses the cause or why a student would want to come to his school and murder his teacher or his classmates. The only thing that does that is social emotional learning and giving them the skills and tools that they need to be able to connect, to be resilient, to manage their emotions. So that is cultivating safety from the inside out. This is vitally important. You cannot have a comprehensive school safety program without external as well as internal safety measures.
Do you think that society is finally realizing, like, yes, this is what we need to be doing as schools, as educators? Now, I mean, it's taken a long time, but I'm starting to hear more about it. Are you starting to hear more that people are realizing, okay, we need to fix this?
Well, I think when you talk about being a part of the solution, it's not just to the violence in schools, it's also to bullying. Because bullying is increasing. It's to substance abuse. We have substance abuse that is skyrocketing. Drugs are now killing more people than cars and guns combined. We have a mental health epidemic where 49.5% of our US youth will have a diagnosable mental illness by the time they're 18. These are all issues that have been around for a long time, as long as I can remember. And it's not like we're not all human beings and we want these things to stop. And we're all impacted in one way by them, yet they continue to escalate. And I believe that's because we have taken such a reactive stance towards them. And you're right, we need to start being proactive and preventative. We need to start focusing some of our resources towards proactive prevention, or we will never get ahead of these issues simply because we haven't.
And I would think, this is just my opinion, but it does need to be in the hands of the school. I think, years ago, it's the parents are to do the parenting and the schools are to do the educating, but unfortunately, a lot of children don't have that parenting, or they may come from a broken home, or they may just get lost, or maybe they do have great parents, but something fell through the cracks. So it really is important for the schools to have this, and to be doing this.
Everyone can benefit from social and emotional learning, and we know through decades of research that kids that have social emotional learning get better grades and test scores. That's what every parent wants, right? Higher graduation rates, higher attendance, less anxiety, less behavioral issues, less bullying, because it proactively prevents this. We know kids that have had social emotional learning when they were young have less substance abuse when they're adults, less mental illness, less violence, less incarceration, even less divorce rates. So it's something that can really not only benefit the child as an individual, in fact, we know that this is what's in their best interest, but it can also benefit our society as a whole. And these skills and tools are what all employers value most over IQ.
What you're doing is so positive, and the fact that you speak, and we were talking earlier about motivational speakers or speakers who go out, you're giving a message, and you are able to go and speak to whether it's school or a corporation or whoever, and you're leaving them with something. I think, as your son had said, you don't want people to leave and go home and watch Netflix. You want people to leave and say, okay, now what? How can we help? What do we do? If people were seeing you speak, or educators or somebody wanted to get involved, where can they go? They go to your website, or how can they get more information and become more involved with this?
You're right. When they come to hear me speak, I want something inside them to shift. I want them to walk away a different person. I want them to be dedicated to making themselves and the world a better place. And everything that we have is on our website, and it's all available at no cost. And our website is jessieLewisChooseLove.org.
Forgiveness. That's a really hard thing for people to do. And that's very important, obviously. Talk a little bit about forgiveness and why it's so important.
It's interesting because before Jesse died, I didn't know a lot about forgiveness. And I would watch news stories and I would think, my gosh, if anybody ever harmed any one of my family members, I would never forgive them. And then it happened. And I had to take a hard look at the perpetrator and realize that he is a human being and that he was a human being in pain. There is no mass murderer gene. These perpetrators are cultivated into what they become by their society, and I was part of society. And so I realized, that there are really only two types of people in the world. There are good people like you and I and the viewers, and then there are good people in pain. And that's a positive statement because we can all do something to help ease another's pain. And when I looked at Adam's life and I realized that he did everything that a young boy is supposed to do. He cried out for help, but not like, you don't see kids in class saying, usually, excuse me, I'm having thoughts of self-harm and harming others. Can you please make an appointment at a psychiatrist at your earliest convenience? They do things, they write things, they say things. He did all of that and everything was missed. So in actuality, it's easier for me to be angry for him than it is to be at him. But ultimately, what I learned through my experience about forgiveness is that it was my key to freedom. It was me taking my personal power back. It was cutting the cord that attached me to pain. I understood that Adam murdered Jesse, but I did not want him to destroy my life, and I realized that with forgiveness, that could be a choice. And I knew that my surviving son was watching everything that I did, every word that came out of my mouth, and I knew that I did not want him to be defined by the tragedy. And I wanted him to learn as well how to overcome the obstacles that we all face in life with grace, and to be able to turn them around into something that he could use to better himself and to better the world. And so all these things I learned, and you can learn, and in fact you have to learn because you're really not born with this knowledge.
So everything is turning around things and taking something and turning it into somehow to help. I mean, that's everything that you're doing. I mean, do you think you were put on earth to do this?
I absolutely feel like I have found my purpose. I am definitely a part of something that is much larger than me. I'm playing a very small part, but I feel very grateful to have found my purpose.